Hey everyone. On this episode of Teeter Talks, I had a really great conversation with Jim Estill. Jim is the CEO and owner of Danby Appliances. He's an angel investor, he's an entrepreneur, he has an incredible track record in business and entrepreneurship. But what impresses me most about Jim is his connection and his relentless focus on giving back to the community, personally and through his business, and how he's constantly challenging other businesses to do the same. We talk about leadership, we talk about entrepreneurship, we talk about building a business out of the trunk of his car that he eventually sold for $2 billion, and everything that comes with being on this journey to success and pushing ourselves to grow and think differently. You're really going to enjoy this conversation. Please enjoy Jim Estill. Hi, Jim.
Morning.
How's it going? It is still morning, isn't it?
It is still morning. It's going great.
Good. I'm so thrilled you could be here with me today. I've known you for I've known of you. I think we've crossed paths many times in the community, but we've never really sat and had a conversation. So I'm really excited to be able to do this with you today. So thank you.
And I'm looking forward to it also.
Wonderful. So, those people out there who maybe don't know of you yet, they soon will. You have such an impressive resume. You know, you've written 2 books about leadership and business. You've built and bought and sold and run multiple businesses as a business owner, as a CEO, as an entrepreneur. You've done a TED Talk. You've won countless awards, including the Order of Canada, which we will come back to. Your impact in business and entrepreneurship is incredibly impressive and undeniable. But what I find most impressive about you and interesting is really the work you do in the community while running all these businesses and doing all these things outside of the community. I'm curious to know where that comes from. I'm wondering, have you always been wired this way with this community focus? Or was there a turning point? Why are you so focused on building strong communities?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of who we are, it starts from child. And I think most kids are altruistic.
Mm,
And so what happens is many people lose that altruism. Um, I think I know what happened. I sold my business for a lot of money and I lost my purpose
mm,
because I didn't need to work.
right.
And then when I started to do some good things, I refound my purpose.
Mm.
So when people say, why do I need to make more money? I need to make more money to do more. And that gets me up in the morning because I actually don't need to make more money to buy another car or to buy another property. I don't want it. I have one house. That's sufficient for me. I don't want more than that. And I don't want things. And so I think that's where I ended up putting more in the community. Um, and I guess when I grew up, it got pounded into us that be a good person. Like that's the whole thing, right?
Well, what a wonderful thing to take through from your childhood. Some people's baggage is not as pretty, but that's wonderful baggage to take through. And I love the line you say, and I know you've been very vocal about this, is, how much money do we really need? And the reality is you need more money to do more good. I mean, and tying that to your purpose, which was beyond the work that we do. I say this all the time. Your job is just something you do. It's not who you are. You need to find a real purpose that will get you out of bed. And how wonderful if your job plays into your purpose and your career and your business plays into it. But you've done so much good. And one of the causes that you really got behind, and this is perhaps where people will connect the dots with your name, perhaps they've heard of you before, is during the Syrian refugee crisis a few years ago, you were very active in that cause. You actually personally funded with your own money almost 200 Syrian refugees to come to this country. And beyond that, help them get settled and get on their feet, which is a really big part that sometimes gets missed in these processes of bringing people to this country. I'm curious why you leaned into this particular cause and if any stories stand out to you from that experience.
Well, I am impacted by the news,
Mm,
and what was happening was tragic, and we see Ali Kurdi washing up on the beach in Greece. I forget, he's an 8-year-old, 10-year-old, and your heart dies. And you say,
Yeah.
well, and then I say, well, what can I do? And then I researched and found out Canada has a private refugee sponsorship program that you can actually fund people to come to Canada. Now, prior to that, or simultaneous to that, I've donated more money to the hospitals, to Hospice Wellington, to
Yeah.
um, many other causes. But those you just write a check.
Right.
You don't have to. I didn't have to put the roof on the hospice. They got the roof done with
Right.
the money, um,
But checks are so
and
important. We need people to do those as well. So,
we, we we do. But with
yeah.
refugees,
Yes.
we I had to figure out what was good settlement, and I wasn't fully happy with all the settlement
Mm,
stuff that was out there. So I approached it like a business to say, how do you do this? How do you scale it? And that's what business people do. We scale things. So I ended up with 800 volunteers. So every refugee family that comes in has 4 or 5 mentor families, and they have checklists to meet them at the airport, to arrange temporary accommodation, find permanent accommodation, uh, get the furniture, get the housewares, register the kids in school, open a bank account, get a bus pass, ride the bus with them, all of this stuff, and doing checklists, which is what you
yeah.
do in business. So it's run like that. The other thing in business, you always start with your what's your goals, what's your purpose. So in refugee resettlement, we came up with 4 pillars. One is speaking English is one of the pillars. So once you know that's a pillar, the minute you're communicating with people, it's like learn English. Here's YouTube. Here's Duolingo.
Yeah.
Let's do English tea circle. Let's do English walk and talks. Who's your English coach? Second is working. So although I may have got some altruism from growing up, I also got Puritan work ethic. I just have this thing. If you're capable of working, you should be. You should contribute to Canadian society. You should work. So people working, some degree of integration. I didn't want to create a ghetto of refugees, and I love Guelph, but Guelph has people, Italians who came here after the war, who still haven't integrated much with the community. I know
Right.
they've all gotten pretty old, but I didn't. I wanted people speaking English, some degree of integration, and then the fourth pillar is giving back. So you're encouraging people to give. They can't, which is particularly good because I need the volunteers because I'm still settling. I'll settle 100 families this year, which is
Oh my
like that's
goodness.
2 families a week,
Yeah.
and that means you need to have um, people drive to the airport every week, and you probably need 2 cars. So you're talking 4 drivers to the airport, and it's just a lot of doctor's visits, dentist visits. You know how
Yeah.
difficult it is to find an apartment, a townhouse. Like it's
Yep.
what you would have to do though if you moved to Guelph the first time. How do you
Yeah.
find out where the grocery store is, right?
Well, I think about that all the time when you travel to foreign countries, how much pre work goes into navigating a vacation. Like, forget a resettlement to move to a new country. Just you want to navigate every detail of being able to manage transportation and accommodations and just being able to, have a smooth travel situation. So, coming to a new country, I couldn't even imagine. And as the granddaughter of Italian immigrants, it's funny you say that. I think about my nonna and my nono learning English by watching Young and the Restless. So there was no active, programs for them. I think of them, to your point, sticking to their communities and learning it was other Italian immigrants who had come before them who taught them how to do all the things you just mentioned, right? So, how to get jobs, write resumes, get their driver's license, get all their identifications, find doctors that maybe were also Italian or could understand broken English. I mean, the list goes on of what it takes to bring these people into our country and to help them thrive. I mean, this is a country, deep rooted in indigenous people and culture who have been here for many years, and then also built on many people who have come from afar who have come to this country to help build it. My grandfather helped build many of the highways that we use in Ontario to get from point A. We won't talk about how efficient they are today, but helped build these highways.
I
So
was wondering who to blame for that.
you can blame him. No, it's one of those things where it's just wonderful to see that someone, and I love what you said about the business mindset, is that as business owners, this is where people could have immense value in the community, is to bring their business knowledge to the table in some of these community crises that we have or that we're dealing with, to be able to leverage their resources, leverage their knowledge, and apply it to a charitable or community centric problem to find really unique and innovative solutions. So I've watched your work firsthand. I know the furniture bank that you send up so people can find furniture. I know you and I both collaborate with a charity we hold near and dear called Hope House that provides programs for these individuals. And I've interacted with many of these individuals who they're so excited to give back. They don't just want to settle, they really want to give back to everyone who's helped them get here, and they really want to be in this country. So I think that it's honorable work that you're doing, and I love that you've leveraged all this business experience to do all that good.
Well, and the other thing, there's unintended consequences in what I did. One unintended consequence is I don't have problems hiring people because many people come and want to work here.
Right. Yeah.
Another unintended consequence is there was a lot of press around that where I didn't set out to do that, but
Right.
it all of a sudden became a lot of press. And I managed unintentionally to successfully link my business to doing good,
Mm.
even though I would say Danby appliances are not inherently good. Like, I mean, it's not like I'm doing, you probably don't need a bar fridge. You probably don't need a wine cooler. You can probably live without a freezer even. But I mean, of course, some of what we sell is, affordable appliances, but you can link any business to good if you tie your profits and what you do, and it can be linked to any project. I also learned to not, um, because some people would say, "Oh, that means you don't you must not like the homeless." Well, no, I contribute a lot to the homeless
Yeah.
just because they thought refugee means you only do refugee. As
Right.
you point out, we both do Hope House, right?
Yes.
Like it's not.
No, you don't discriminate. I mean, you're very actively involved in a lot of causes. And it's funny. Well, first of all, I might argue that a lot of people would benefit from a bar fridge and a wine cooler, but that's just my opinion. But I do think when consumers are out there making choices of where they will buy a bar fridge or a freezer, it matters. I mean, social responsibility is at the top of a lot of people's list these days, right? When you're looking at the businesses that you want to interact with, where you want to spend your money, the brands you want to partner with, and even you mentioned for hiring. I mean, employees, people want to work for organizations that stand for something and that mean something. And you could make anything. You could make insert any widget here, but you can still have a culture of purpose and a culture of giving back. And you've done such a great job of inspiring other businesses to do that. And I would almost say challenging others to reconsider their business models and how they get out there and get involved and what they and the impact that they could possibly have and the good that it has not just on their communities but on their brand and their business and their people. There's a lot of stakeholders that benefit when you do good.
There totally is. Now you have to be careful on saying, "Oh, you do it for branding."
Mm,
Like it's like greenwashing to say, "Oh,
right.
yes, I put a solar panel on because then everyone's going to
Right.
think I'm nice and green." Well, no, you want to do it. The world sees through inauthentic people or
Absolutely.
inauthentic companies. And you also mentioned something about people wanting should support companies that are good. I always say every time you spend money, you are voting with your dollars.
Sure.
You are saying, this is a company or a service that I like and believe in. And if you don't spend your money, you're voting for something that you don't believe in. So just be careful where you spend your money.
Yeah. I mean, we could talk about this all day. I mean, supporting local is a great way to place your vote with your dollars. And um, I do think that there's a level of consciousness in this generation. I just remember years ago, I had the opportunity to interview and host an event with the founder of Tom Shoes, and they, every time you bought a pair of shoes, they would donate a pair of shoes. And it's so funny because my daughter was really young at the time, and I remember wanting to buy her a pair, and I took the time to explain to her the story of the shoes. Well, didn't she a few months later use it against me and be like, "I think I need another pair of shoes, mom, because we need to donate another pair of shoes." And I'm thinking, well, there you go. So she's already got it figured out. But I am one person for sure that looks for those types of things. But also to your point, I think I can sniff out an imposter a mile away if I was given the opportunity.
And that's a message to your
Yeah.
listeners. You do it authentically, do
Yeah.
it from the heart, do it for real. But there are unintended benefits, so it maybe doesn't cost you as much as you think it will cost you.
Absolutely. I would agree. So uh, I want to go back a little bit. Young Jim, once upon a time. What were you like as a child? Did you display a lot of these entrepreneurial, leadership driven qualities when you were a kid? How would you describe yourself?
I was too driven.
Mm,
Yes. So I was very, very driven. And from a very young age, like, I started a painting company before there was such a thing as college pro painters. And I
I did
hired my
too.
brothers, I hired my neighbor, my friends, and we painted I grew up in Woodstock, Ontario, and I painted 100 houses in Woodstock. To this day, I hate painting houses. So I did that. And I also, in that time frame, had a refugee interaction.
Mm,
So my parents, we billeted in our house for I think a year, two Ugandan refugees, two men. They were 20 years old at the time, and at the time, I wasn't gracious about it. I was slightly upset because I had to move back in with my brother. Like we shared a bedroom,
yeah.
and then I had got my own bedroom, and then when they came, then I had to move back in, and so. But and I realize now, or after the fact, how brave my mother was,
Mm,
because we brought in two 20-year-old male strangers into our house who lived in our house. And not a huge, like this it's back in
yeah.
the area where your houses are not huge.
Right.
It doesn't have its own doors and locking or anything. It's and so we billeted them, but they started, um, they were both accountants. They both went on to have successful careers. One of them ended up being the CFO of Rockwell, which is a huge company,
Wow.
and he retired from that. And the other one went on, was a successful accountant. Unfortunately, he died, which,
Oh.
is sad. But he died when he was maybe 50 or something like that.
But what a wonderful thing to have strangers take a chance on them and show them, so much grace. And it's interesting that you experienced this at a young age, and maybe at the time it maybe wasn't a positive one, but you can look back and clearly it had an imprint on you. The impact of doing good, helping strangers, and seeing that just giving someone a little bit of love and support and what it could possibly do in terms of altering the path of their lives. I love that.
Absolutely. I mean, after I saw them settled, how grateful they were to us, it was also a cultural experience back then, because
Yeah.
Woodstock, when I was growing up, was everyone's white,
Yeah.
and and we ate meat and potatoes, and one of
Sure.
these people was Hindu that didn't eat meat.
Right.
It's like, oh, I guess you can do that. And my poor mom was trying to cook with curry, which was not a thing back when I was
Right.
growing up.
That's amazing so brave of her to do that. I love stories of people who really step outside their comfort zones to just try to do good and care for others. And there's still so many opportunities like that today. We have neighbors just down the street who have taken in a refugee from Africa who, he was looking for work for odd jobs, and I just thought we probably overcomplicate these things in our minds sometimes when really if we could just give a handout and a hand up to people, it could make such a big difference. And it's funny that that started at such a young age with you. What else were you interested? I mean, I did a college pro painters as well, and I hired. We were talking about this the other day. I hired my little brother at the time, who would have been 12, and he used to go on his rollerblades and flyer neighborhoods for me with my pamphlets, and I used to pay him in Big Macs.
Perfect. So I hired my older brother, and then I hired my next younger brother. My youngest brother was too young to work for me, but he put up, you know, the posters.
Yeah.
Like he went and did it. And back then, there's no cell phone, so the phone number was our home phone number.
Oh my
Mom
goodness.
would answer the phone and take a message for me. It was, and
That's
I was too
amazing.
young to drive. I was riding my bicycle out to quote jobs with this clipboard, pretending I was a little business guy. And my competitive advantage in that small community was being polite and on time.
Mm,
And I did what I said I was going to do. And the competitors were almost pigs. You know, they'd show up and then they said they're going to be there at 9. They show up at 10. They'd walk into the house with their paint shoes on, and we always took our shoes off. One of the things we'd have is we'd always take a garbage. We're painting the outside of the house. We always had a garbage bag, and we would clean anything out of the hedge. And we didn't
mm.
leave anything. It was just so simple, and it took a total of 20 minutes extra. It was nothing, but meant we got the job. And the competitors. So that's how I ended up painting hundreds of houses.
It's a good life lesson, eh? Being polite, showing up on time, and doing what you're saying you're going to do. I mean, there's probably takeaways there for all of us in business and in life. The simplicity of follow through and accountability.
Really simple,
Yeah.
really simple.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I recommend anybody who to try doing a student painting company. I think I never built more resilience in my entire life. See, they did have cell phones when I ran my company, but I didn't drop one, but I dropped two in gallons of paint. So I lost two cell phones that summer. And unlike you, I did have a car, and my neighbors would come out at the wee hours of the morning, watch me try to load a 40-foot ladder on my little Honda Civic. So that was my experience. And to your point, I never want to see another paintbrush ever again.
Uh,
But it built a lot of other, uh, put some hair on my chest, if you will, built some good resilience. What else did young Jim like to do? Were you any other hobbies? I mean, you eventually ended up at University of Waterloo in engineering, but what else did you do until that time besides painting houses?
well, I mean, I early on I had the paper routes and I had part-time
Yeah.
jobs all the way through. So I worked a lot, and so somehow that work ethic got built into me. And we had a big garden, so I gardened.
Oh, nice.
And I had 3 brothers, and to be perfectly sexist, that means that the boys cooked. So those are lifelong hobbies. So I
Yeah.
gardened, except now my back's not that good, so I
Mm,
don't, you know, but so I have a lot of weeds in my garden,
mm.
and but I like gardening and cooking, which I wouldn't, so I don't have traditional hobbies. Like I don't do sports,
Yeah.
and I don't even do music. So we had no music in the home. We had no television, so
Hmm.
we had no. It wasn't a normal. It wasn't the same as all the other kids, which of course you're jealous. It was just like
Yes.
at school. I was jealous of the kids who had white bread, like
Mm.
Wonder Bread, because all I had was this homemade stuff. Which, of course, now it's like, oh, to die for homemade bread.
Isn't that funny? I remember being jealous of kids who weren't eating mortadella sandwiches every day because that's what I used to eat growing up. A nice Italian kid in my home. But my friend used to tell stories about how her mom's baked goods. Her mom used to make homemade cookies all the time, and she used to wish she could trade them for packaged cookies because she was so
Yeah,
sick of homemade cookies. So you know what? I don't think any child was immune from that. But it sounds like you kept yourself pretty busy, which I think is a good lesson for a lot of parents out there. I think about that all the time. The best parenting advice I think I got from someone was just, keep your kids so busy that they stay out of trouble. So through hobbies and through sports, part-time jobs. And I look back and my parents kept us pretty busy. I don't remember too much idle time between, even social time to me is keeping a kid busy, right? Just not sitting around. So I think your parents probably knew what they were up to and they kept you busy and with all the gardening and the cooking and the painting and all the other things.
that's right. And another theme for me was I was selling.
Right.
So I would like Dad would give us each a section of the garden, and I would grow cabbages this year, and I would carry them in a wagon and sell them to all the neighbors, and um,
That's amazing.
and so you're selling in a
Yeah.
way, right? But
Again,
that's
another lesson we should be teaching our kids is how to sell. Eh,
yes, it
I
is,
mean,
and it's
my
probably
daughter had to sell Girl Guide cookies. I'm like, "Well, this is a good life lesson. You're gonna have to put your iPad down and you're gonna have to go knock on doors, look people in the eye, and ask them if they would like to buy cookies," which to her was terrifying, but
well,
so
you're right.
necessary.
good life lesson.
Yes, yes, yes,
And,
yes.
and, and it's probably politically incorrect these days to say, I kind of believe in child
Labor.
working. Well,
Mm.
I mean, I
I
had a
said it for
newspaper,
you,
right?
it's okay.
Yeah, yeah. I had a newspaper. I mean, I don't believe in children's sweatshop or
No, no,
dangerous
no,
work,
no. Yeah,
but going and selling the cabbages that you grew to the neighbors, that's perfect. Selling Girl Guide cookies.
yeah.
I should probably report you for that.
Mm. Well well, it's better than them sitting in my house, Jim, and then I'm gonna eat them
Oh,
all, and then I'm gonna owe
oh,
all the
that's
money, so I'm trying to
yes.
spread the good. She did a great job, by the way, and it's funny because we ran out halfway down the street, and one of the neighbors was watching us from their window, hoping we'd get to him, and then he never came, and so he comes down the driveway, he's like, "Where are you guys going?" I said, "We ran out," and he was so upset. So anyways, we ended up finding him a box, but,
Awesome.
yeah. So I want to get a little bit into your time in business building because, like I said, your business resume is immensely impressive. You went to University of Waterloo. You were in engineering. You started a business out of the trunk of your car and ended up selling it for 2 billion with a B. And so now you have my attention. And for the record, this would also make a really good movie, by the way, which we'll come back to. Um, how did that happen? So you're selling stuff out of your trunk, and you eventually build it to be a $2 billion company.
Yeah. So I was an engineer, system designer. I wanted to design circuit boards. To design circuit boards, I needed a computer. Back then,
Mm.
computers were expensive, I got a better deal if I bought two of them. So I bought two and sold one, and then someone wanted another one, so I bought another two, and then someone wanted a printer, and then someone wanted, and I was a computer nerd, and I loved the tech back then. So I'd sell memory, and I'd sell printers, and I started selling software, and pretty soon I'm buying and selling computer hardware, software, and peripherals. And I hired my brothers again. I hired, I started hiring people. Eventually, I moved into an office. And at one point, the office was probably, I don't know, 2,000 square feet, and it was too full of all this computer stuff. And I was still designing circuit boards. So I split that company into a different company called Connect Tech. And that went on flourish. And it's still in business down in the south end of Guelph, actually.
Wow.
Gorgeous facility right now. And I had the best partner in the world in that business. Um,
Doesn't matter.
and and then I just started growing that company. What I would do is I would study people who were running businesses bigger. So when I was doing 5 million in sales, I studied people doing 10. When I was doing 10, I'd study people doing 50. 50 study 100. 100 study do a billion. And so I always try to figure out what they would do, and developed a lot of business philosophies around growth and around like one of the things I say is failure's good, fail often, fail fast, fail cheap. So I try a lot of things, and I fail, but that's okay because
Mhm.
it's fail cheap. I didn't lose the company
Right.
over that. Um, I also had a great deal of luck in my business life because at the time I started selling computers, they were not that common. And so I would just hit the right wave at the right time by accident. But I was just, I was a kid. Your university studying computers, you love that kind of thing,
Yes.
right? So that was my, and then although you say I do multiple business, I did that business and all of the other, most of the other stuff I did while I was doing that. So I would see new technologies and I would invest in them, or be a board member. I advise entrepreneurs. So I invested in over 150 companies,
Mhm.
and the other one, again, pure luck. I invested in 150, and I was an advisor for a lot of companies, 150 companies. But I'm famous for doing BlackBerry. But that was luck. Like
Yeah.
I picked that one at the same time I picked other ones you've never heard of because they went away altogether, right?
Yes.
And then but I lucked out on a number of others that ended up being sold and whatnot. So
Yeah.
luck has played a lot of part as well.
Yeah, I think
And
people are afraid to use the word luck, right? Because but I do think you also said the other word that factors into the luck, it's timing. A lot of these businesses and big ideas and opportunities come down to timing. Sometimes in various industries or markets, they ebb and flow. And if you happen to launch your business at the beginning, of an upcycle and sell it before the down cycle, not that you can time these things always, but timing does matter. And I think we get afraid of using the word luck because, I mean, you weren't lucky in the fact that you took risks and you did the hard work and put yourself out there to research these companies to invest. And that's not luck, that's hard work. But marrying that hard work with some good timing makes a big difference.
It absolutely does. On the timing, I'll say I never have timed it perfectly. I never buy at the bottom, sell at the top,
Right.
but I often am able to catch the wave. So I
Yeah.
buy a quarter of the way up and sell three-quarters of the way up and whatnot. So I've been lucky in that regard. The other entrepreneurial characteristic is, I think as an entrepreneur, you have to shake off any things that don't work,
Right.
and you don't get stuck in those, and you get known for your failures. See, I could said I invest in 150 companies. Oh, and by the way, 100 of them went bankrupt.
Right.
Let's talk. We're going
Right,
to
but
run
that's
through
not
all
the
the
headline of
bankruptcies.
your resume, but it's a
How,
big part of who you were.
yeah.
Yeah.
So how
Yeah.
stupid was I 100 times?
Yeah.
But no, you shake
Yeah.
that all off because, oh yeah, I got this win, and then everybody thinks you're a genius, but you're not. And I would do that as a distributor. I was selling other people's products, so I would sign 5 different vendors. I sold HP and Microsoft and Apple and
Right.
um, Oki Data and Lexmark and all these lines. I'd sign 5 lines. One of them would be win, a big win. I signed Apple when Apple was going bankrupt. Everyone thought I was a genius. So I did Apple, but at the same time I did that, I did Techmar, Seattle Computer, um, Quadram,
Right.
and you'd never 3 go out of business. And then I have a walking wounded one that did okay. Epson did okay, but didn't set the world on fire. And so that was usually my track record. I have one winner, one did okay, walking wounded, 8 washouts.
Right.
And as long as you fail off and fail fast and don't lose too much on the losers, then
Yeah. I mean, you're the second very successful CEO and, entrepreneur I've had on this podcast. I had Julie Cole, the CEO and founder of Mabel's Labels, and she talked about sometimes you have to know when to push through, go all in, push and persevere. But other times you need to know when to pause, pivot, stop. And you just said sometimes you have to walk away from these things, get back up, brush yourself off, head in a different direction, try it again differently. A lot of the mantras out there sometimes are go harder, go faster, be stronger, do more. Sometimes you have to pause and go, okay, that this is not working, or this did not work, but that's okay because I'm going to pivot and go. I'm sure from every loss there was a learning that came from it, but it didn't stop you from going after the next one, which could have been a loss as well. But then you take the learning, and then hopefully the next time after that it's a win. But I do think sometimes we don't often stop, reassess, and allow ourselves to fail, get back up, pivot, change our minds, and try new things in new ways.
you're right. And your podcast is a pivot example, right?
Oh
You
yeah.
personally,
Yeah,
right? You know,
yeah.
that is all good.
Yes.
And the other thing about when do you stop? That's an entrepreneurial question, and entrepreneurial questions have no right answer.
Right.
So I get people telling me all the time, "Oh, I want to do this. I want to do that. Is it a good idea?" It's like there's no right answer. Should you sell shoes or should you sell hats? There's no right answer. And my other experience is often the experience I had doesn't translate to the new business
Right.
because times are different. And
Yes.
you can't totally say just because that's what worked in the past, that's not necessarily what's going to work in the future.
Right. But on that train of thought, I mean, as someone who has invested in a lot of startups and built companies yourself, what are some of the common traits you see in successful businesses, or something that you would want to see to put your money into something? Are there common characteristics and traits that to you are a good indication of success?
So I look for 3 things in a business. I look for um, sales and marketing. How easy is it going to be to sell the product? How easy is it going to be to market it? How expensive is it going to be to sell? How expensive is it going to be to market? Again, no right answer.
Right.
You can say it's real easy to sell, in which case everybody else is going to sell, which means it's going to be low margin, or you
Right.
can say it's real difficult to sell. Look at the technology. Is there huge barrier to entry that this is patented, that this you need rocket science, or is there no barrier to entry? It's just easy peasy. And again, no right answer. You can have something that's pretty easy because something that's complicated has high risk because maybe they can't make them this way. And then the third thing I look at is business, and that is, can the thing make money? So I hear sometimes, oh, I've got this great product. I have 1 million people on my fitness app. And how much do you charge them? Oh, we don't charge them. And how do you make money? Well, no, it costs us this much to run the cloud. Like it's, so those are the three things I look for, but I overlay all that, most importantly, with the assessment of the entrepreneur.
Mm,
And that is the most difficult because good entrepreneurs are coachable, but they're not coachable. They need to be independent thinkers. You don't want them to blindly take your advice. You want them to think. You want them to logically push back. But you also don't want them to be so independent they don't listen at all.
right.
You want them to be good people. And that means treat their partners fairly. And you want them to be scalable. And that's the toughest thing because I've met entrepreneurs. Oh, they're great. They run a great company. They've got 10 people. They've got 20 people. Little difference between 20 people and 200 people or 2,000 people. And can you scale? And for that matter, do you know maybe when your time is done?
Right.
And it's not that you shouldn't be the one that's running it when there's 200 people. And again, entrepreneur question, no right answer. I ran a business from 0 to $2 billion in sales, so that's what I did. But not everybody wants to or
Wants
chooses
to
to
do
do
that.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny there. It's like watching, sometimes I watch Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, and I'm immediately drawn to the business owners, to me, as being the greatest variable in the success of these businesses. It's sometimes you see these great products, but then I kind of wonder how this person, if this product was in the hands of someone else, I sometimes think maybe it would do better, or vice versa. Where you're an incredible entrepreneur, you could sell anything. Insert any product here. So it's just funny how those personal characteristics are kind of that overarching characteristic for you in terms of how you make your decisions.
But your problem on Dragon's Den,
Yes,
Shark's Tank is in a 10-minute clip. You can't really know,
fair. This is
is
fair.
that person uh, really persistent and are they good when and the other part of being a successful entrepreneur tends to be some pivoting, as we talked about earlier.
Yes,
And so you want entrepreneurs that pivot enough but are persistent enough. And
yes.
tough one.
Yeah. So speaking of pivot, you eventually sold your business, and in your bio it reads he sold his business in brackets too early. So you kind of decided to retire, and then you're in retirement and you're like, "Well, wait a minute. I'm not enjoying this. There's more I want to give." Then you turn around and you become the CEO of Danby Appliances, as you continue to be today. Then you eventually buy the company. Tell me a little bit about that time, because I think a lot of people retire and then think, well, wait a minute, I this is not for me. I want to do more. They don't have a plan. I don't, and then the other people are busier in retirement than they were, when they were working. So what happened there? Why did you decide to get back into it?
Well, I think partly because I'm not a hobby guy and don't have many hobbies, except I like the gardening and I'm a workout guy, so I like fitness. But I sat on the board of Danby Appliances. The CEO resigned. It wasn't my plan to be the CEO. I just said, okay, the CEO resigned and I could go in and run it because Danby was smaller than what I was previously running. I said I could do it. It happened. I actually retired. I moved to New York just to have a stint in the States. My dad got sick, so I moved
Oh,
back to Guelph, and I didn't really have much on my plate. So I said I could run Danby. I started running Danby for about 6 months, and I said, "Oh, this will be my next decade gig. I'll run Danby as a CEO." I didn't feel I needed to own it. It was the ownership group that said they wanted me to sell Danby, and then I said, "Well, how much for?" And they told me. I said, "Okay, fine, I'll take it." That's how I ended up owning Danby Appliances. Another good reason for me to own Danby is it allows me to do my non-Danby stuff with Danby resources, where if I'm a
mhm.
hired CEO, I have to ask the owners of Danby were the previous owners were very gracious and very generous and whatnot. But basically, I ask a Danby truck to go pick up some furniture. Well, if I'm CEO, I don't own that truck. That's Danby Resource. Now, fortunately, Danby was not a public company, but public companies are even worse. At public,
Right.
you
A lot of
really
red
are
tape.
beholden to the public. You're not beholden. You can't make that decision. But once I own Danby, I can say, oh yeah, no problem. The boardroom's being used by for a charity meeting today, and oh, all these mattresses in the warehouse, they I don't have to charge rent on it because it's my
Yeah.
warehouse. I can do whatever I want.
I love that that's where your mind went because there'd definitely be some people out there who just would just want the power and don't get me wrong, I'm sure the I guess what I'm getting at is you've used the power for good. It comes with the power of being able to decide how you want to use the company. Certainly it was a good investment, but I love how for you it was an opportunity to leverage the company to its max to do good and have it show up how you wanted it to show up. That's a really another great perk of owning a business.
Well, and in after I retired from my business, I did dabble and coach and work with a bunch of little businesses.
Yeah.
What I learned with working with little businesses is I couldn't get the same leverage I can on a company like Danby
Sure.
Appliances. See, with Danby, if I increase sales by 10%, that's $40 million. If I increase margins by 1%, that's $4 million. Big numbers. Problem you have with a $100,000 business, you can save 20% on expenses and it's $5,000. Like,
Right.
and
You
so
love
it
the
wasn't
scalability.
giving me
Yeah.
the juice combined with the fact when you're smaller, I found I was ending up having to do more. It's like the painting of the houses.
Right.
At the end of the day, I didn't love painting the houses. I liked doing the quotes and collecting the money, negotiating with the paint store. Like that's what I like and figuring out process.
Right.
That was what I liked doing. And that's what I get to do now because I've got a company.
Yes. And so for you, the we've talked about many things that you've done that traditionally people would say you're very successful. Do you feel successful and how would you define success? This is one of my favorite topics.
Well, I'm lucky and yes, so therefore I'm successful, but I'm just a regular guy. And what happens is people try to say, oh, this person is demigod and or this person's a dog, and we're all somewhere in between that. And if I ever start thinking I'm a big deal, I just drive to Toronto and look at all the businesses there that are 10 times our size, or I go sit by a lake and look at the stars at night and say, okay, I'm pretty darn insignificant. um, and as far as how do I define success, that's a really good question. um, I think success for me is tied to feeling of peace and um, but at the same time I have to have drive because if I lost my drive I feel I would not no longer succeed, and partly because a company like Danby is not a high margin business. Like you're fighting every day, you're selling to consumers, and
Yeah. It's a big
consumers are a
deal.
tough bunch to please,
Yeah,
right?
we are. Yeah, and I suspect for someone like you, when you look at your journey, your life journey, that your definition of success has probably evolved over time in
Yes,
terms
yes.
of what mattered to you, your ability to focus on what mattered, your ability to fulfill your purpose. I agree. I think I've always talked about success as this idea of having choices in life. You're, doing what you want to do when you want to do it and having the ability to kind of fulfill your purpose and however, whenever, wherever you want to. And it's not a final destination. It's certainly not material, I've come to figure out for myself. And it sounds like you've been on that same journey of, continuously redefining what success is as you continue to hold yourself to higher standards.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
it definitely evolves. The
yeah,
more you know yourself,
it's so true.
the better you can do in life, right?
Right,
And the more you accept that.
right. Yes, and one thing I do know as I speak to, we'll use the word successful people, high performance people, is their success was never defined by a thing, right? When I bought my first home or now it could have had an underlying meaning that that home had, but it's never a thing and it's never a final destination. You don't settle into success. Like it's almost fleeting always a little bit. You're always still kind of chasing it. It's a continuous journey, but you do check in with it every once in a while and you kind of take the pulse of, do I feel like I'm on this positive path towards success.
Yes.
Make sure you're in the right spot. So you're a busy man. You're doing a lot in the community. You're still helping settle refugees to our community. Danby is a very successful business. What's next? What's on the bucket list?
Well, right now I've been buying onshore manufacturers. So I bought Valcom Manufacturing in Guelph. I bought Arctic Snowplow in London,
Yeah.
and partly because I'm looking at the trends, and I believe there's going to be more of a trend to made in Canada or made in North America, and more insular walls put up, tariff barriers and stuff like that.
Yes.
So I am doing that. At the same time, you can't do that without automation, AI,
Hmm.
and whatnot. And I'm also evaluating aging and myself
Hmm.
because my first half of my life, one of my keys to success was massive work ethic. And I still have that work ethic, but I realize the older you get, the less energy you have. And I can't say I'm going to be the one that comes in at 6 in the morning and leaves at 9 o'clock at night. That cannot be my next chapter. And so I surround myself with good people who
Hmm.
I'm going to say run the business. All I do is I just so it's all servant leader. What can I do to help them succeed? If they succeed, then I succeed.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a good point. I mean, it's an area that I'm very fascinated with, this idea of aging, this idea of taking on new chapters or new seasons of our life where you don't want to stop. You may just work differently, right? You may show up differently. You have to take care of yourself differently. You may have to prioritize some things. Um, but yeah, I would imagine I don't picture you slowing down, probably just shifting gears, but taking time to maybe inspire others to do some of this work with you. It gets the load is easier when you have others doing your good work with you. So
That's
that
right.
matters too. So one of the things you kind of just mentioned that I'm always curious about is you're the face of Danby. I mean, you social media, you're out there. There's you Google you are in a lot of places. How do you feel about being the face of a brand? Do you feel? I asked John Sleeman this question when I spoke to him on one of my first podcasts, and he just said, he's like, I don't think we're that interesting. I don't think people really care what I'm doing. And I'm sure maybe some people disagree. And then there's a lot of successful brands out there, and we know them, the Teslas of the world, where the CEO feels the need to be the face of all things around the brand. So where do you feel, how do you feel about that? Do you feel the pressure to be the face of your brand?
I do feel the pressure to be the face. When my previous company, I took it public. When I was public, I hired an investor relations person. And what I learned is nobody wants to talk to an investor relations person. They only want to talk to me. So if
Absolutely.
I'm going to be there anyways, I may as well be there. And the other thing, when I first started getting any press around refugee and stuff I didn't want any press. And then I learned that having some of that profile gave me power.
Mm,
So I just this week communicated with Christine McGee, who's chairman now of Sleep Country. Would she have returned my emails if she didn't have the face? Why am I communicating with her? Well, of course, I want mattresses for my refugees, right? And
absolutely.
they're in the mattress
Yeah.
business. And so I get my calls returned
Yes.
and I get things done. So when we need things, I can put the word out. And that's one of the things that you have when you have a social media footprint. I can say, we need more pots and pans at the furniture bank. And I just have to say that. You can drop them off at the Danby reception area, and I'll fill the boxes we now have down there looking for pots and pans and dishes, and then that'll do us for the next quarter.
Yeah. It's amazing how you've leveraged what you've built, and it wasn't, I know it wasn't your intention, but how you've leveraged all of this to do so much good. It's inspiring, and I know it's a big part of your mission to inspire other businesses to really reconsider the role they play in their communities. I mean, I've said it for so long, a business is only as strong as the community in which it exists. And if we can build strong communities, inevitably you're building strong companies. So I really want to thank you for that, because I live in this community that you've done so much work in, and I'm grateful for everything that you've done. I'm not going to let you go just yet. I have a handful of rapid fire questions I'd like to ask you. We'll keep it quick, but um, I'm curious. How would you define a great leader?
Servant leader.
Servant. I agree. Yeah. To build a great business, you must.
Be flexible and entrepreneurial.
Favorite way to spend a Saturday morning?
Going to Guelph Market.
Ooh, the market. Going to find some cabbage and other vegetables that you could turn around and sell.
Yes, exactly. And that's voting with my dollars. I'm spending
There you
dollars
go.
with the
Locally.
local farmers, and I'm in a fortunate position. I can afford to do that.
Yes. Yes. I love it. We've come full circle on supporting local. Um, I mentioned about your story would make a great movie. So if someone had to play you in a movie, who would it be?
Well, see, the problem is, I told you I'm the most boring guy you've ever met.
Mm.
I don't watch television, and I
Oh,
don't know who anybody is because I don't do that.
okay. So this is a good point. I shouldn't have asked the guy who grew up without a TV who should play him in a movie, but we'll
Good,
let the listeners share their feedback in the comments who they think could play you.
excellent.
Yes, we'll do that for sure. Um, what are some words of wisdom that if you could go back and share with your teenage self, you would say?
Not to take things so seriously.
Hmm.
I was too driven, too young, and I just should have been more laid back.
Yeah. This is a question that I get, but I'm going to ask you. If someone wants to get involved in their community tomorrow and they don't necessarily live where we live, but what's the first thing someone can do to give back?
Well, first thing to do is to not overthink it, because what people often do is they want to research and make sure everything blah blah blah. There's so many organizations that need your
Mhm.
help in so many causes. It will take no time just to go and ask, and you'll find people that can use, whether it's helping in the soup kitchen, whether it's helping sort used clothing, whether it's helping Humane Society. There is gazillions of organizations, and you've got Google, and just ask.
Yeah. Speaking of just asking, I find sometimes just posting on your social media and getting people to give you some ideas of things that you can do. Because I do find I feel sometimes I take it for granted that I know our community and I know the key players. And if I've got a bag of clothing, I know who to take it to. If I want to bring a group of people to cook some food in a kitchen for the homeless, I know where to go. But not everybody knows how to navigate that or where to start. So I generally say, ask, to your point, people around you, or go to your, if you're in Canada, go to your local United Way. They generally know all the players in town and can direct you accordingly. Some towns or cities even have centralized charity posting websites where they post and feature all the different charities and event calendars and things of that nature. Your local chamber of commerce. So lots of lots of great things. Any final thoughts, Jim, for budding entrepreneurs, business owners? You mentioned times are different today, but you've also mentioned how you're trying to evolve yourself and adapt to what you think is coming and where you think the tides are shifting to. But what would you share with someone who asked you to have coffee, who wanted to download as much business knowledge from you? What are some little nuggets you would share?
Well, one nugget is to be a constant learner.
Mm,
And that is the only way that we're going to be able to morph and change to succeed. Another thing, people always think these are the worst of times. These are actually the best of times, and we will all look back on what are the worst of times as with fondness. That's
right.
just, and I should share the secret to happiness, which I learned from the refugees. The secret to happiness is to be grateful for what you have, not ungrateful for what you've lost, and not ungrateful for what other people have.
Hmm,
And if you're happy, which means you're grateful, then that will help you in life.
absolutely. Yeah, gratitude is the key to all things, perspective, joy. I absolutely agree. Well, Jim, this has been really wonderful. I'm glad we finally got our chance to sit down and chat and we got to share that with all my listeners. My hope is that people take away some learnings to fuel their businesses, to fuel the mandates of their businesses, to focus on community as a way to grow and do good and enhance the impact you can have on all your stakeholders. And if you're not a business owner or an entrepreneur, you are a leader in some capacity in your life, maybe at work, maybe in your community, maybe in your family or your friend circle. step up and find ways to leverage the collective strengths of your group, whatever that group might be, to go back and do good in your community, to step up as a family, or to step up as a team at the office or in the community. I really encourage people to leverage the resources they have and their skills to go out and do some good. So thank you for sharing that with us today. And I wish you all the luck. And I look forward to seeing you in the community sometime soon.
Great. Look forward to it.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Jim.